the Grammy-winning older brother of pop star Billie Eilish.
Because we were in the studio every day, and by the studio I mean my childhood bedroom.
Now, Finneas is opening up. What have you learned from Billie?
The number one thing I've learned from her is just
on Fame and Family.
Although Billie and I have had to yell at our mom a couple times about not replying to hate comments on Instagram and YouTube.
And how a George Floyd protest inspired his latest chart-topping hit. Tell me about your new song. I love what it's about.
It's a song called What They'll Say About Us. I love the direction this conversation's going.
Finneas, welcome to the show.
Hey, thanks so much for having me.
And where are you right now? Are you in LA or are you elsewhere?
Yes, I'm in my home in Los Angeles, in the room where I record all my music.
I love it, the creative layer, good stuff. When you think about how you made it, because I'm sure there's been a million stories written about it, but you actually were the person like in there and you saw it.
Yeah.
Like, give us the short version. Like, how did you make it? Like, how did it happen?
That's an awesome question, and I will preface to anyone listening who might be curious that when I was growing up, I would listen to every interview of everyone talking about how they made it, and it would all seem like impossible or why hasn't that happened to me? So my sort of comforting to someone would be like, it's different for everybody. So in my specific case, it basically I started writing songs when I was 12 and just wrote a lot of terrible songs every day. Just wrote like hundreds of, and I thought they were great at the time, but I over the years, it's like these were not the diamonds that I thought they were.
You wrote that?
What, is that impossible to believe?
Yeah.
Just sort of toiled away for a couple years in my room alone. And then I had a friend who I just knew socially, who at 17 was like trying to be like a rapper singer and was like, you produce, you're amazing. And I was like, yeah, I'm amazing. Like, he doesn't know that I'm not. And so he kind of, he really gave me confidence that I wouldn't have otherwise had just by dint of thinking I was good when I wasn't yet. So we made some music. We started uploading it on the website SoundCloud. And then after several months of doing that, my sister and I, who were homeschooled, so we spent a lot of time together.
Hi, my name is Billie, and I'm going to play a song that I made up with this guitar. And I had always thought her voice was very beautiful, and I sort of said, like, you know, I'm getting a little better at recording. Like, do you want to record a song with me? Wouldn't that be cool? And she obliged, and sort of, to her own credit, is like a real perfectionist.
Sometimes doing something that's the most effortless and natural is actually really hard. And so we're like, yeah, let's say duh in that part. And Billie goes like, duh. And then she goes, I don't like the way I said duh. Let me do it again.
I did say duh like 30 times.
She would do like hundreds of takes of the same line. Be like, no, I can do that better. And we did a couple songs that we just uploaded to SoundCloud and sent to our friends. And they just kind of bounced around between people we knew. You know, they would get like a couple hundred plays, which at the time we were perfectly proud of. We were like, that's all the people we know. That's everyone. And then we put out, the third song was a song called Ocean Eyes. And that song started to get picked up by blogs. And to this day, I don't honestly know how blogs found it. But from there, we had this song that sort of was buzzy on blogs, and not like, you know, overnight Lil Nas X proportions, just like a couple thousand plays every couple days, and that was plenty for us. And then we started sort of more seriously writing songs together. We got some label interest, and then met with people, and then over the next year sort of continued to like create music. You know, every step of the way, because it's so personal, it feels like the biggest deal in the world to you, you know, because we were in the studio every day, and by the studio I mean my childhood bedroom. But we were in my childhood bedroom every day, you know, working really hard on what we were making, and it felt like very do or die, which is like a little extreme considering it was not. And you know, then we made this EP that sort of moved the needle a little bit. We played some shows. It was just all this very gradual thing. And I think I bet every person who's gone through some amount of overnight success, except for like maybe Mason Ramsey, the kid who yodeled. Pretty much everyone but him, I think, would be like, it actually took years.
The Our Home is the training ground for her dreams policy. Insure carefully. Dream fearlessly.
You know, Finneas, it's funny, when I was watching you in some of the interviews you've done, what have you, I was taken by how, this almost seems like a weird word, and I don't mean it in a patronizing way, but just how mature you are and were, and just like how grounded and seemingly in a good place you were. How much of that do you think has to do with A, is that true? And B, how much of that has to do with being homeschooled?
Yeah, I was gonna say tell that to my therapist, but you know, I don't know. I think first of all, I'm so lucky because I do my favorite thing for a living, right? So there's not much for me to be pissed off about ever, right? I wake up and I get to go do like the thing that I would do for fun if I had a different job. So I try to never take that for granted.
It's funny. I grew up, I'm the son of teachers, and even for the little bit that I've done, I know there's a certain pride, but I'm imagining for your mom and dad seeing you, like that must, I don't want to put words in their mouth, but what's it like for them? Is it a little surreal given that they were artists as well?
So I think it's twofold. I think they have their own pride and excitement about our careers, and then they also have this kind of cautionary side. My sister and I joke about this all the time. With our the financial advisors, which is like our parents have their warning. And again, I'd prefer this to any other form of behavior, but they're always like, look, it's great that accident happened and you got successful, but you have to, every penny you've ever made, you better bury that in a hole in the yard because you may never make another dollar again. Which is, again, I'd way prefer that to our parents being out buying a Lamborghini or something, but it sometimes we're like, Mom, we have a tour like next year, like we have a job, like we're going to work.
Best new artist, Billie Eilish. Song of the year.
Bad Guy, Billie Eilish O'Connell.
What happens in the family dynamic? I had an interesting conversation years ago with Jeb Bush about what happens when your brother goes from being the ne'er-do-well, the brother, the sibling who's not doing well, to all of a sudden president.
To the president of the United States.
And all of a sudden he's like, Thanksgiving changes, right? Like who people listen to changes. Like where people sit, he's like, the whole dynamic changes. So like what happens when all of a sudden, you and Billie start to have kind of global success? Like what happened to the family dynamic?
Well, our family, because of Billie's lack of age, travels kind of as a unit, essentially. So we do travel together, which is really wonderful. It has resulted in some like I do a smaller amount of touring on my own under my own name, and my parents will be like, oh, we should come to the show, and I'm like, please don't, like you are always everywhere, so I'm happy to go play this show without my entire family in the dressing room. But I think the four of us, our dynamic has not changed at all, although Billie and I have had to yell at our mom a couple times about not replying to hate comments on like Instagram and YouTube. Like you can't, we're like, Mom, you can't win against like thousands of strangers. You can't be like, actually, she's very not, like you can't like change someone's opinion for no reason that you're never gonna meet ever. Like, yeah. So, but I get it. If I were my mom, I would do the same thing.
That's got to be nice that you guys as a foursome have kind of grown up together and that's happened. What have you learned from Billie? Because normally it's the younger sibling learning from the older sibling, but I assume because you guys are partners and collaborators and the learning's going both ways, what have you learned from her?
The most overwhelming thing that I've learned from her is that she is such a sort of Renaissance woman, like is involved in every facet of her career creatively in a sort of a directorial fashion that I think especially when I was, her age, 18, I was looking for approval from people that I deemed professionals. And I think it has only basically benefited her to only worry about whether she loves something or not. And I wasted a lot of time at 17 and 18 sort of going, I love this, what do you think? And having a much older person say it's not good enough. And Billie has never entertained that. I think that's the number one thing I've learned from her.
Do you think that's a Gen Z thing, or do you think that's more of a Billie thing?
I think there's a level of it that is broad, that's part of that generation of, like kids creating everything on their own. Like, let's use TikTok as an example. Like, that's millions of kids under the age of 18 basically like formulating the concept for a joke, filming themselves saying the joke or doing the joke if it's a bit, and then editing it in a funny way and then publishing it themselves. Like, that's turning like every 16-year-old kid in their bedroom into like Quentin Tarantino. Like, that's like writing it and cutting it and editing it and directing it and releasing it. And I think that is a big deal. And I think for all the flack social media takes, people are not talking about that enough, which is that it is empowering kids to be creative in a more direct way than it has ever, before done.
That is so interesting what you're saying, Finneas, because even when you think about like democracy,
Yes.
democracy at some level is built on the idea that things will move a little bit slowly and that if the House of Representatives acts too quickly, the Senate will do something, Supreme Court. But your point about the level of speed and how many different decision makers there can be and kind of exploding the kind of gatekeepers, that's a really interesting thought.
Like to expand on this, because I love the direction this conversation is going. I think, Congress, the Senate, House of Representatives, the presidency, the cabinet, it's basically moving at the same speed it moved in like the 60s. And news is moving at light speed. And so like we're learning about things instantaneously, and the legislation and the bills being passed are still weeks and months in the future. There is a reality that I hope we're headed to where things are enacted more quickly, because I think basically the not this generation, but every person who's consuming news as quickly as we are all consuming it are like, why isn't change happening as quickly as news happens? I don't know. I think it's back to like how fast we consume new information versus how fast real change and evolution takes place. But yeah, we're definitely at a pivotal point, I think.
And the other thing I'm curious about will be your career and Billie's career, which is because careers can happen faster.
Yeah.
Will there actually be more turnover?
No, I think about that a lot. I think it depends on your impact. Like, I'm at this point, candidly, like I'm not tremendously worried about Billie's long-term, like her longevity. I think she's made enough of a mark to me where I kind of have a feeling of like, if we just keep putting out albums and people keep liking them, like we can tour for a long, long, long time. I think you're right. I think there are people that may have shorter careers than their accountants think they will have. It's really always important to just make sure that next song is great. I just want to make something that's great, that's like undeniably like well made.
We've got the time to take the world and make it better than it ever was.
Tell me about your new song.
Sure.
I love it, and I love the sound. I love what it's about.
Thank you.
But for people who haven't heard it yet, and congratulations. For those who haven't heard
Thank
it
you.
yet, where did the song come from?
Absolutely. So it's a song called What They'll Say About Us. I started writing it in early June. I'd been going to Black Lives Matter protests in Los Angeles with my girlfriend and my sister. That's sort of like our quarantine pod. And protests always make me feel really optimistic and inspired. I think if you think of like the internet as like a division machine, and it's, you know, you're seeing not just both sides, but like every side of like what everyone thinks about every issue. I think when you're at a protest, like in person, standing there, walking down a street, you're like, all of these people around me think the same thing that I think is messed up is messed up. Like, it's very powerful to me to be around that many people that agree with you and are you know, out there spending their day in the sun on a Saturday trying to provoke change. So I'd come home with kind of that like inspiration in mind. And then I had been on Instagram that evening looking at Amanda Klut's Instagram story. Amanda is the wife of Nick Cordero, who was a Broadway singer and actor and songwriter. And he died of COVID-19 in July. Of like what it would be like to be her specifically, but anyone with a loved one in the hospital, kind of like looking out the window and seeing that there were like thousands of people in the street marching for change, and you're still trapped in this moment where your loved one might not make it. And so I was just sort of trying to write a song about how I was feeling about those two things happening at the same time, which was that I would have told, if I had a loved one who was ill at the time, like I would have just been kind of telling them about it, being like, you know, there's real change happening. There's people really upset about this, and when you get better, or if you get better, and I hope you get better, then we'll be here for it. So that was the inspiration behind the song.
So blue, and you still breathing. Won't you tell me if you find that deeper meaning?
You know, on the show, I end up talking to a lot of people about dreaming fearlessly, because I feel like a lot of people who are watching, the good news is that they do have big, bright dreams or things that they want. But I know that a lot of people along the way sometimes lose motivation. Things get hard, things go left, etc. What's the best advice you've either given or received about how to still dream fearlessly when your motivation starts to ebb?
A dream that you have is something that you feel basically very far from at the time, right? When I think about my lifelong dreams, they began, before I'd even taken a single step in the direction of that thing. And so I think the encouragement I would give to someone is like, none of this stuff happens all at once, especially even now as a songwriter professionally. I don't usually put any pressure on myself to do 100% of anything on one day. I just put a little pressure on myself to not do nothing. And so I think if you have any dream or aspiration or ambition, like just inching yourself a little bit of the way in that direction is all you need to do at any one given moment. And if you just do that over and over and over and over and over, you'll get so much farther than you will if you just kind of are thinking about it every once in a while. But I think it's good because obviously, like, people have urgent needs, right? We all have to, pay for the food that we eat and the place that we live. And if we have kids, we have to provide for them. So, it's like you can't always drop everything and chase after a dream that will provide you no, form of income. But you could take a little step. You can have your whole day of doing everything else, and you can just put one thing down in that direction, whatever that direction may be. So I think that would be the advice I give, because it's true in terms of everything I do now. It's like, you know, every time I want to do something, I'm like, wow, I'm so far from done, but at least I'm not at the beginning anymore. At least I'm in the middle of this.
Hey, Finneas, man, I so enjoyed you. I really appreciate you coming on the show. What a great way to get my day going, and I hope you'll come back again. I hope this won't be the only time you join me.
At some point when it's safe to do so, I'm happy to come in person. It was a real treat to get to talk to you today. Thanks so much for all the thoughtful questions, and really appreciate you taking time out of your day.
Hey, I really enjoyed Finneas. What a good dude. Really appreciate him. Appreciated his good energy. Love the come up story with him and his sister. But you know what I really like? He actually really made me appreciate the power of Gen Z. I kind of appreciated it, but hearing him talk about the ways in which people no longer having to ask for permission, no longer having to go through like tons of intermediaries, but being able, whether it's on TikTok or other places, have their own voice. Man, I think there's big change ahead, and not 20 years from now, but 5 to 10 years from now. So guess what? On the Carlos Watson Show, you're gonna see a lot more Gen Z going forward. Hope you enjoyed it. I hope you'll subscribe. Hope you'll tell a friend, and maybe you'll listen to the podcast. I'll see you soon. Hey, tune into the Carlos Watson Show. It's like no other. You're gonna enjoy it every weekday on YouTube.